Hello, Internet. It's time for another Wednesday's serial. I'm gonna first apologize for last week. I didn't do a video because some stuff happened that I had to take care of. It's mostly recorded, but I haven't had a chance to come back to it, so I'm gonna take care of that before next week, so there will be a delayed video coming soon for those who care. This week, though, I'm just going to talk about two books. I've been trying to cut it down to one, but you'll see why I want to talk about two. What I want to focus on is kind of an idea of genre. So, different books are about different things, but more or less we kind of go for two or three of the same kinds of things. And with comics, inevitably, it's kind of superheroes, which is kind of technically an amalgamation of crime and sci-fi stories in a way, but they've kind of hit their own thing, especially in comics. They're definitely their own thing. There's obviously the science fiction, and there's the crime separately, which when you take those apart tend to get a bit further. And then beyond that, in comics, it's kind of other horror, I guess, is the other last main one that you can really point out, at least for American comics. When you get to manga and then sometimes more European stuff, there's at least a bit more variation, certainly less superheroes in those areas. So there's just kind of that. But as far as what we're reading week to week, those kind of tend to be the main things. And so I wanted to talk about Saga 22. We're really not so much 22 as much as the last kind of chunk we've been in. Because I think we're looking at another break now. And we're kind of in another phase. I know a lot of people wanted to pick up, but we've been dealing with kind of more of a romance story in a way, or at least adults dealing with situation. I'm kind of liking the fact that they have to contend with having a job, dealing with a less than ideal relationship after a while, dealing with some just kind of real struggles and stuff that I'm not reading much of anywhere else, especially in my comics. And it's something that I guess I'm responding very well to, and a lot of others aren't, and that's very understandable. They're coming to this book looking for science fiction. And I initially did too, and liked it as much as everybody else when it started. And now that we've moved more to kind of this romance angle, which is kind of interesting how it morphed, but I'm really digging it, and I'm fine with it, because I can't think of almost anywhere else that I could go for this kind of comic storytelling that's currently coming out. I know of a few examples of past, and both of them that I can think of off the top of my head are old indie classics. But week to week, day to day, we don't get this, and it's something we don't explore much. And I've been thinking, like, why aren't there more romance comics? And that typically tends to be more of a female-leaning sort of thing, but why aren't we dealing more with that? And a lot of people are okay with gratuitous violence, but that brings me to my next book. And I'm just kind of landing on this, so it is in the second book that I was going to talk about. Low, issue 2 starts out, I don't even think this is spoiler territory because I'm going to be so general, gratuitous sex, just boom, right there for you. And reading this book, I mean, the violence is in here too, and it's a mature theme. In a way, it's less mature, whatever. But it's there, and I find it interesting that people are going to judge one over the other, because I know I'm going to hear something with that from someone at some point, because it's almost inevitable. And especially with the feminist viewpoint we're going, that's been passed around, and partially due to what's been going on more of the video game space, because the feminist frequency videos have been catching a lot of ground, whereas they're about video games. Other people in pop culture have been applying it elsewhere, which is fair. And in here, we're dealing with a lot of what they talk about, where the only women are mothers, virtuous, and then whores, bad, and nothing else. And that's true here, but here they play an honest juxtaposition with it, and whereas, yes, it should be more, and we should be so far beyond that, the honest truth is, knowing that from a literary perspective and the sheer juxtaposition of how they do in that comic makes for an interesting case there. And the male character that the story does kind of focus around is only dealing with those two ends in a lot of ways. So in a way it still is a feminist piece in a way, but it's like we're going to have to step beyond. And given the first issue, there's no reason, I don't see why this series couldn't step beyond, but this particular issue, if you're to take it on its own, is in that area as well. So that's not a genre as much as a reading, but it's this idea of what we're willing to look at and what we're willing to play with. And we've talked about it before, and now it's been a number of years and we're in kind of this Image-esque renaissance. And we're kind of past it. We're judging some of these books, we're throwing some of them away, and we're comfortable and happy and expect a certain amount of diversity. And we've finally reached the point where some people are throwing some books here, some books there. People are reading more of what they want because there's that many good books to throw around, and that's really kind of cool. But I also feel like we've reached one step and we're officially there now. We're officially past that Image renaissance first step where there can be more than superheroes regularly, and it not anything coming out to be cool has to be like a Vertigo or the Offbeat Wildstorm or whatever, that sort of thing. Like, it can just be a comic that's published and it's fine. So we're there, and so we have the sci-fi and the murder and the horror. Now it's time for some like Renaissance and slice of life stuff to come up and not be like just webcomic or indie, self-published comic that you have to pick up at a convention or know the creator and order directly from, or some of that nonsense, but move to more the space that we're all looking at. And that's cool, and I'm looking forward to that. On the other hand, we're also looking at kind of a death of publication, so it might end up being a digital thing, but more through Comixology or fully competing service. So here's hoping for more of that in the future and a bit more diversity, because I'd like more. And to that end, there's a book I wanted to bring up. Pop. This is a 4-issue miniseries published by that small up-and-coming, well, no, but not Image, Dark Horse. And it's Dark Horse doing something sub-property, which is cool. And this is kind of crazy. I mean, first off, just from the cover, I mean, cool design, whatever. 4-issue miniseries, alright. And Dark Horse, kind of that other indie that could be the like, if they up their status, could become like the 4th big player in comics. Maybe. They are copying Image with this from a few years back, where before they had all these different series going on, they did a lot of 4-issue minis to kind of establish, play out what people are looking for, find their place in the market in a way. And this book is different than a lot of Image books, yet you can't help but feel it's more similar because the competition to Image is Marvel and DC, which play with basically one tool. I know there's exceptions, but you know what I mean. Pop, first of all, I just want to bring this up and recommend it because it's a 4-issue mini. It's coming out now. I don't think I've heard anyone talk about it, and this is really cool. It's this really cool idea of this facility that manufactures pop stars. And the whole book is steeped in pop culture, obviously, and pop comics, because we're in a comic, whatever, but it's talking about, like, pop music and a bit of pop art and whatnot. And this pop star is grown, essentially, and they talk about and reference some current and recently career past pop stars, how they were grown there. And this was going to be essentially the next, like Britney Spears or whatever, escapes, runs away, and finds this total solitude and starts hiding out, and things start machinating, and I mean, yeah, sci-fi, but not like the high sci-fi stuff or whatever. I mean, this is also a touch of fun, a touch of humor, and has some crazy assassin stuff going on, and it's not like, spacefaring sci-fi with bizarre artists and kind of attempting to be almost poetic writing. Like, this is more just like kooky comics, and yeah, it's science fiction because it's not reality. It's more fantasy, whatever, and it's cool to have the variants. And this feels and breathes so much different than a lot of ways the other stuff that we're reading, and more in a place that I'm happy, and I'd like to see more comics go from some of the more image stuff like Low, or even honestly Black Saint, and that's unfair, same writer, but or even like kind of even some of the Brubaker Phillips stuff, like that hard crime stuff. When they do it, obviously good quality, great. It's a good comic. So is this. And we're getting down to the point where we're going to have more choices. So it's cool, and it feels like if Dark Horse keeps this up, we're going to be hitting a place where Image was like 4 years ago. And then we come up, and then we have competition in that space. Then we'll have kind of like the big two, and then the other two, and then we'll have, at that point, probably another couple, and there'll be more like tiers of comic publishers, and it would just be awesome. And it would be like, comics are cool again, because the truth is comics are never going to be as big as they were. Nothing is as big as it was. Movies keep being mostly relevant, but their numbers aren't quite what they were, though it's less stagnated about other things. But I mean, hell, even video games or TV or anything, like, there's so much out there. Everything's brought down because you have to appeal to people with different interests, and because you're appealing to people with different interests, not mass audiences as much, at least, you get smaller numbers, but there's so much more out there for it. And it's just really cool. And it's kind of this deviation of culture that's been happening since pop culture, which came along once America started identifying its own culture way back with theater, basically. Started happening, and that's been the story of media progression. Low since its inception. There you go. So, rambling. There you go. I'm actually going to probably record another video, Toot Sweet, here tonight, but we'll have the commercial break with YouTube, except I don't throw on commercials because I love you guys, and I'm not going to get money anyways. Because I only get like 20 views. We should change that. Like, favorite, subscribe, and share with your comic friends. Tell them that I talk about comics, and they'll wonder why you sent them this video. You're like, this guy was white and rambling, and why do I care? And you're like, because he's interesting sometimes. You're like, not that video. And you're like, yeah, crap, but he asked. So nice. And they're like, what? Who cares? You're like, fuck. And it's just gonna be a bad day. But you should totally do it.